Welcome back to Venture Onward, your go-to place for all things pop culture and comics. In today's video, we're diving into the thrilling story of Ultimate Spider-Man, which is a part of the new line of comics from Marvel. Today I will be covering Ultimate Spider-Man #1. The story is written by Jonathan Hickman with pencil and art by Marco Checchetto. Alright everyone, let me unravel this captivating narrative for you. Imagine this: 2 decades ago, Peter Parker, our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, missed out on becoming Spider-Man, thanks to an interfering character known as the Maker. The radioactive spider that should have granted Peter his Spidey abilities during his teenage years was thwarted by the Maker's meddling. Now, let's fast forward to the present. Peter is leading a strikingly different life. He's happily married to Mary Jane Watson, they have 2 children named Richard and May, and Peter is employed as a journalist at the Daily Bugle, where his uncle Ben Parker holds a prominent position as the managing editor. But brace yourselves, because there's more to the story. Just a year ago, New York City endured a catastrophic terrorist attack, allegedly orchestrated by none other than Tony Stark himself. This tragedy resulted in numerous casualties, including Peter's Aunt May and Ben's wife. Fast forward to January, where snowflakes cascade from the heavens, blanketing the cityscape in a pristine white. Inside his apartment, Peter Parker wrestles himself out of bed, casting a weary glance at his reflection in the mirror. He observes his own aging with a sigh, swiftly dressing and retrieving his wedding ring before shuffling into the kitchen, where his 2 children await. "You sound tired." "Late night?" inquires his son, Richard, as Peter plants kisses on their heads and reaches for the awaiting pot of coffee. "Thank God for Mom," Peter murmurs, his thoughts drifting to his wife, MJ, Mary Jane. "Thank God for coffee," echoes MJ as she enters the room, eyeing Peter with concern. "And I've got to say, Tiger, you look like you need it." She moves closer, scrutinizing Peter's demeanor, before their lips meet in a tender kiss. Concern etches her features as she queries whether Peter has been struggling to sleep. Peter nods, gulping down the caffeine-laden brew before turning his attention to his briefcase. His daughter, May, reaches inside and pulls out a shiny silver ball, drawing Peter's immediate attention. Not a toy, kiddo," he gently chides, reclaiming the item from May's grasp. With a promise to discuss what's been weighing on his mind later, Peter bids farewell to his family and heads out the door for work. Sometime later, we find Peter strolling through the bustling bullpen of the Daily Bugle. Heads turn as J. Jonah Jameson bursts out of his office, making a grand entrance and calling out to Parker. Jonah pauses briefly as he passes Peter, exchanging a greeting before swiftly continuing on his way to the office of the paper's managing editor, Ben Parker. From behind his desk, Ben addresses Jameson, reminding him that there's no need for such loudness. Jameson grins at his friend, inquiring if he needs the 4 o'clock meeting rescheduled for his thing. Ben declines, assuring him he'll make it without issue. As Peter peeks through the doorway, Jameson identifies him as your guy to Ben. "Hey Ben," Peter greets his uncle, turning towards him, "You ready to go?" Ben nods, slipping on his jacket, and the 2 of them prepare to leave when Jameson interjects, halting Peter in his tracks. He remarks on Peter's tie, prompting Peter to realize he's not wearing one. With a gesture of dismissal, Jameson removes his own tie and expertly fastens it around Peter's neck. As Peter watches his uncle departing, he leans into Jonah, murmuring a question about Ben's well-being. Jonah arches an eyebrow, then quips about the unlikely scenario of him and Ben discussing feelings. He finishes tying Peter's tie and advises him that if he truly wants to know how Ben is doing, he should simply ask his uncle directly. With a wave, Jonah ushers Peter out the door. Later, Peter and Ben traverse the snowy streets of the city, making their way toward the memorial mentioned by Jameson earlier. Peter finally gathers the courage to broach the subject with his uncle, asking how he's truly feeling. He notes Ben's silence on the matter thus far. Ben glances at Peter as they walk, contemplating his words before finally speaking. "Peter, you were just 15 when your parents passed away, and you came to live with May and me," Ben begins. "We loved you unconditionally, but we never tried to replace your parents. We tried to teach you about the world and prepare you for it, but we couldn't fill that void left by your parents," he admits. Ben reflects on the 2 decades since Peter's parents' death, asking if there has ever been a day when Peter hasn't thought about them, a day when the pain of their absence doesn't sting. Peter lowers his gaze and responds with a solemn no. Ben nods in understanding, and they continue their journey toward the memorial. "And I think you know exactly how I feel," Ben adds. Eventually, Peter and Ben reach the memorial, where they are greeted by Mary Jane and their children, who are also attending the service for the victims of the Stark attack. Among the names of the fallen, they see May Parker's. Father Matthew Murdoch, a solemn figure, presides over the memorial, offering words of reassurance and urging the attendees to cherish the memories of their loved loved ones. He encourages them to recall the good times they shared. After Father Murdoch steps away, Harry Osborn takes the stage, sharing his own poignant memories and confessing his ongoing struggle to come to terms with his parents' death and the attack. He agrees with Father Matthew but emphasizes that memories alone cannot suffice. Harry laments the stolen futures and exchanged dreams, expressing uncertainty about living with the loss. Following the memorial, Peter lingers with his family for a few moments longer, assuring MJ that he'll head straight home after a quick check-in at the office. MJ whispers to Peter about her prior encounter with Harry, noting the significant changes in him. Peter recalls Ben's past interviews with Norman Osborn, reflecting on the surface-level understanding they had of the billionaire. Back at the Bugle, tensions rise as Ben and Peter return just in time to witness Jonah Jameson, the formidable editor, storming out, declaring his resignation after a clash with the paper's owner. Jonah strides past Ben and Peter, locking eyes with them before departing. Ben casts a meaningful glance at Peter, instructing him to head to his desk and keep a low profile. "We'll catch up later," Ben adds before entering the meeting room to face the board. Ben discreetly asks if he missed anything, prompting Robbie Robertson to explain that Jonah objected to some editorial restructuring and the paper's controversial coverage of the Stark attack, which had drawn complaints from advertisers. Consequently, changes are imminent to appease both the board and broader ownership. As Ben surveys the room, he notices a new face seated at the table, flanked by a man sporting an eye patch. The new member, revealed as Wilson Fisk, announces Jonah's departure and hints at new leadership. Ben, it seems, is the natural choice for promotion, should he desire the role, Fisk adds with a raised eyebrow, albeit with a caveat to adhere to certain expectations. Ben responds with a smile, signaling his acceptance, before exiting the room. In the elevator, he encounters Jonah, who's finishing packing his belongings. "What's our next move?" Ben asks his old friend, ready to navigate the uncertain path ahead. Later, Fisk and his companion from the meeting make their way towards their waiting car downstairs. Just as Fisk is about to enter the vehicle, an object hurtles through the air, detonating the car in a fiery explosion. The assailant, cloaked in mysterious green armor, narrowly escapes with his life, leaving chaos and destruction in his wake. Meanwhile, Jonah and Ben find themselves at the bar with no name, savoring a few rounds of beer as they plot their venture to start their own newspaper. They envision returning to their journalistic roots, dedicated to delivering honest reporting. Ben chuckles at Jonah's idealism, remarking that there's no absolute truth in news and no news in absolute truth. However, they agree not to resort to outright lies in their new endeavor. As Peter joins them, revealing the stability of his job and Robbie's assumption of leadership at the Bugle, Jonah finishes his drink and departs, leaving Ben and Peter to their conversation. Peter, observing Ben's ease in leaving his job, questions his uncle's decision. Ben simply shrugs, explaining that without a wife and family to consider, the choice was straightforward. Peter, troubled, confesses to feeling a sense of unease, a nagging feeling that something is amiss in his life, though he can't quite articulate it. He expresses a yearning to become something more but feels lost as to how. With a reassuring smile, Ben rises from his seat, urging Peter not to wait for life to unfold but to seize control of his own destiny. He advises Peter to awaken from his complacency, emphasizing the importance of taking charge of his own life. With that, Ben exits, leaving Peter to ponder his words and contemplate his next steps. Back at home, after tucking their children into bed, Peter settles down with Mary Jane to discuss their day. As they unwind, MJ notices a lingering unease in Peter's demeanor and gently probes him about what's been troubling him. Peter opens up to MJ about feeling a strong need for change in his life. MJ reassures Peter, reminding him of the support he offered her when she left her job, but she recognizes that this conversation is different. Peter emphasizes the depth of his desire for change, expressing a dissatisfaction with his current state. MJ, understanding the weight of Peter's words, acknowledges that she's noticed him carrying a burden for years, despite his outward composure. She places a comforting hand on Peter's knee, encouraging him to take action. With a hint of uncertainty, Peter admits he believes he knows what he must do, though he remains unsure. MJ's concern deepens, prompting her to question if this change will affect their relationship. Peter's response is firm and resolute: there will be no change between them. MJ expresses her unwavering support for Peter, planting a tender kiss on his forehead before retiring to bed. With a loving smile, she urges him to go after his aspirations, invoking his nickname, Tiger. Later, Peter retrieves something from his briefcase and makes his way to the rooftop, clutching the same mysterious metal orb he encountered earlier. Snow falls gently around him as he gazes at the orb, his mind drifting back to the events of the previous night. Peter recalls working late in the living room when suddenly, an ominous energy sparked on the counter, conjuring the strange box seemingly out of thin air. In an instant, a holographic message materialized before him, revealing none other than a recording of Tony Stark, transmitted from 6 months into the future. Tony explains the dire circumstances they faced, narrowly escaping an attempt on their lives by an orbital platform. Peter is stunned to realize that the recording corresponds to the terrorist attack. Tony reveals that a being from another world, known as the Maker, intervened to alter their reality, eradicating the existence of heroes. Peter and his comrades were meant to be the saviors of this world, thwarted by the Maker's interference. Now, Tony urges Peter to embrace his destiny as Spider-Man, joining a coalition to reclaim their world from the clandestine control of the Maker's cabal. In the present, amidst the swirling snow, Peter taps the silver ball, triggering its transformation. It reveals a small vial containing a radioactive spider. Determined to reclaim his future, Peter releases the spider, which alights gently on his hand. As the sun begins to rise, Peter stands clad in a sleek stealth suit crafted from the silver ball. A new hero is born. And so concludes the inaugural issue of Ultimate Spider-Man #1. What a twist! Our friendly neighborhood Peter Parker is about to embark on an extraordinary journey. Stay tuned as the story continues to unfold.